The primitive farmer, the landless nomad, the horde of refugees, and the terrorists. You can find these 4 Arab stereotypes in paintings, movies, magazines, and Israeli school textbooks still used today. And the Arabs in their books represent the Palestinians.
You never see in any book a picture of a living human being who is Arab, who is Palestinian. They don't exist in our consciousness. They don't exist.
That's Nurit Al-Hanan. She's a professor of language and education in Israel, and she compiled these pictures and others in a book she wrote on the representation of Palestinians in Israeli public school textbooks. The textbooks she studied were all published after 1993, when the PLO and Israel recognized each other's borders during the Oslo Accords. But you wouldn't be able to tell.
Now, it turns out that every time you give Muslim Arabs a chunk of Israel's land, they turn it into...
That's the Israeli Minister of Education. And the Israeli land he's talking about is the Gaza Strip. This map is from a 5th grade geography book. It shows Israel as an uninterrupted state from the River Jordan to the Mediterranean Sea. The Gaza Strip, the occupied West Bank, and the occupied Golan Heights are all shown within Israel's borders. The problem is, Israel's occupation and control of all 3 is internationally recognized as illegal. And while the land is absorbed into Israel, the people aren't. This map claims to show Israel's Arab population.
There isn't even one Arab city on the map. Not even Nazareth or Acre, which are mixed cities. Yes? They just don't exist. And on the West Bank, they say an area without data, which means maybe it's empty.
If the Palestinians are acknowledged, they're caricatures, conveniently placed in Jordanian territory. Absorbing the Palestinian territories into Israel or giving them temporary dotted borders is no coincidence. Peled Al-Hanan found several books calling it the land of Israel, not the state. That's what it's called in the Hebrew Bible. Biblical references can be found in lots of textbooks, even ones used in secular state schools.
Students today would tell you, we have always been here, you know, and they speak about 4,000 years ago. And even in the books, in one geography book, they say Jerusalem has always been the capital of Israel, and in parentheses they write, except for the 2,000 years we were not here.
During that time, Palestinian history and culture took hold. But the Palestinian narrative is rarely mentioned. If it is, it's limited to what happened during the founding of Israel. In 1948, over 500 Palestinian villages were destroyed, and hundreds of thousands of Palestinians displaced. Palestinians call it the Nakba, or the catastrophe. But in Israeli textbooks, it's rarely mentioned. If it is, it's described as a series of military operations, even if many of the massacres were carried out by Jewish militias before there was a state or a military. And other textbooks praise the Nakba for pushing Palestinians to abandon their homes and solving a horrifying demographic problem. And that's how Palestinians are often portrayed, as a problem or a threat, both to Israel's Jewish majority and its biblical claim to a Jewish homeland.
Obviously extremely volatile.
In Israeli media, Palestinians are often stripped of their historical and political context. They're painted as uncivilized masses that pose an existential threat to the Jewish people.
By showing hordes of refugees going from nowhere to nowhere, you promote what exactly? Fear and alienation. And you make them into a phenomenon.
And they're not the only ones. Existential threats are a recurring theme in Israeli education.
We had a Jewish state that was destroyed by Romans in 70 AD. We were expelled by the Spaniards from Spain 1,000 years ago. Hold on. We were expelled from England roughly 1,000 years ago. We had the Germans who butchered us, and now we're at home.
In civics classes, students are taught that Israel is a defensive democracy, because it has to be. In the Hebrew Bible, many stories revolve around a looming threat against the Jewish people. In Jewish history since, persecution and anti-Semitism have been recurring themes too. And today, Israel says it's surrounded by hostile Arab neighbors. And kids in Israel are exposed to all these narratives from a very young age.
It starts with 3 years old, and the idea that everywhere there are people who want to murder us. But today it's the Arabs. We are saved, at the last moment. So for the religious, it's God. For the non-religious, it's the army.
And that's the most important part. Military service in Israel is mandatory, meaning most Israelis will graduate high school at 18 and join the military for around 2 years. They form combat units, man checkpoints, and become the front lines of the occupation, all while knowing very little about the reality of Palestinians. Complex as they are, past, present, and future, they're often just Arabs.
מדמיין שכל פעם אני רואה מולי ערבי מת, זה ממש שמח אותי כבר יותר. ערבים שרוצים אחריי, שרוצים להרוג אותי.
באת לטנק, יורה בכולם, טק 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 טק, הורגת את כולם.
When they grow up, they never see Palestinians, though they are a few meters from them. It's very deep. Racism gets into your blood. And that's the point. This is the making of soldiers.
Millions of Palestinians live both inside the state and beyond the walls and fences. They're disadvantaged and occupied, and a driving force behind Israeli nationalism and the importance of the military. But Israeli kids don't really interact with this reality.
This is a huge success of the education system, because when you talk about the Palestinian problem and the need to have a military government, because it is such a problem, then you can pass it on, without questions.